I welcome Dr. P.C. Muraleemadhavan, my own esteemed good friend, to give the presidential paper. Professor Muraleemadhavan is the special officer of the Kantalur Shala. He is the chairman of the Kunjuni Raja Academy of Indological Research. We have been from our student days for the past 5 decades together in many of the academic ventures. He has a vast experience of nearly 45 years of teaching and research. He has guided nearly 25 scholars for their doctorate. He has authored 20 books, and he has been honored with the Certificate of Merit from the President of India in 2017. And he is also the member of the syndicate of the Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit. And he has been a dynamic force behind the activities of the Kantalur Shala. Now I invite him to render his presidential paper. Professor Muraleemadhavan.
Sarvan Abhivadaye. Kantalur Shala Samsthaya Aidam Prathamyena Ayojite Asmin Antarashtra Charcha Sammelane Asmagam Amandranam Angikritya Atra Antarjala Vedikayam Sanhidebhyaha Sarvebhya Vidwadvarebhyaha Sadaram Kantalur Shalayaha Abhivadana Kusumanjalim Vitanomi Mahadidam Amodasthanam Yat Bharatiya Jnana Sampradayanam Vaidiga Vangmaya Moolam Anvishya Kriyamane Asmin Charcha Sammelane Nakevalam Bharatiyaha Kindu Videshiyaha Bahava Panditaha Tattvanvishanaha Sannihidaha Santi Idi Momudyade me mana Dhanyamatmanam Mani Yet Kantalur Shala Namikayaha Asyaha Kerala Deshastha Shodha Samsthayaha Karyabharam Vodhum Avasaro Mama Labdhayidi Prathamam Davat Jagat Gurun Sri Shankara Bhagavad Guru Parambarancha Namaskritya Antarashtra Samvidhanena Ayojitasya Asya Saraswata Yajnasya Mangalarambham Kurmaha Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Pada Shankaram Loka Shankaram Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryandam Vande Guru Parambaram Vishwam Darpana Drishyamana Nagari Rulyam Nijantargatam Pashyannatmani Mayaya Behirivodbhudam Yatha Nidraya Yasakshal Kurude Prabodha Samaye Swatmanameva Dvayam Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Nama Idam Shri Dakshina Murtaye. Dear scholars, sisters and brothers, first of all, may I salute the entire academic community present in this international seminar on Indian knowledge systems, inquiry of roots in Vedic literature on virtual platform. I am happy and proud to declare that more than 600 research scholars and teachers registered in this international seminar within 48 hours. It gives Kantalur Shala a great momentum and a great amount of confidence in our academic activities. I take this opportunity to welcome all seekers of knowledge to this great institution. I would like to specially mention the names of Professor Mikhail Witzel, Professor Peter Scharf, Professor George Cardona, Professor C.L. Prabhakar, Professor Radhavallabha Tripathi, Professor G.U. Dhite, Professor Shashi Tiwari, Dr. Bhagilata Padaskar, Dr. K. Srinivasan for their contributions in organizing such a meaningful academic event. They all present in this seminar and they will be leading the sessions and discussions. At the outset, I may request you all, the participants of this seminar, to attend the presentation of papers and actively participate in discussions. We should pledge together that we will not waste time in discussing irrelevant matters and unwanted things. Let us pray, Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Right from the very inception of Kandalur Shala, last December 2020, it is only 7 months over now. Kandalur Shala, we could organize several serious programs in the field of higher studies and research in Vedic studies, in Darshana systems, theater studies, etymology, phonetics, and so on and so forth. As you all are aware, the erstwhile Kandalur University has several thrust areas in their academic endeavors. Among such areas of the Vedic Vikriti Padha, that is Krama Padha, had a vital role. Getting a high percentage of marks in the Krama Vara examination was considered in this erstwhile university as a minimum qualification, rather a basic qualification for an aspirant to seek admission in Kandalur Shala. There was entrance test at that time. We are talking about from 3rd BC to 800 AD. And in the process of this renaissance of such a great erstwhile university, we have decided to inaugurate the revival projects with a Kramavara, because that much significance is there for Kramavara. So we started a Kramavara in the month of December, and we have organizing several Vakyartha studies at regular intervals. This was the feature, the unique feature of Kandalur Shala, that Vakyartha studies at regular intervals, organizing Vakyartha studies at regular intervals is another feature of this Kandalur Shala. Quite different from the practice now prevailing. Kandalur Shala used to invite scholars in various shastras, and they stay months together to conduct shastra studies regularly in the university. They stay in the university for months, the scholars. Not like nowadays, scholars, they come in the morning and they go by evening. They stay there. All facilities are provided to them. They mingle with the students and the teachers, conduct regularly the shastra studies, and the outcome of such a discussion and the findings of such discussions will collect, and a new textbook will be written and published in each discipline. This type of practice nowadays we can come across in several universities in modern disciplines. Nowadays we have that, but even before Christ, this type of live academic discussion of scholars and birth of a new composition of a Shastra text work following the discussions are something unique, and Kandalur University is a pioneer in this field. There were 32 departments in erstwhile Kandalur Shala at the peak of its glory. This number is double when we compare to other ancient universities like Padalipura, Parthivapura, Nalanda, Takshashila, and so on. It is clearly stated in copper plates and also in stone inscriptions excavated that the leading university, Parthivapura, and several other universities also in South, was started following the academic discipline known as Kandalur Mari. Historians recorded that Kandalur Shala had altars, and the one at Vizhinjam, very near to Thiruvananthapuram, was for students getting training in military services, military training for using that force, using that students' force at the time of emergency of the nation. See, to that extent, for the welfare of the nation, the students are being trained in such a way. the history of Kandalur has been unearthed right from 3rd century BC, and it continues up to 7th century AD. The present Tamil Nadu state also had campuses of Kandalur Shala. Brilliant students got several opportunities to specialize in various subjects, even subjects like ship technology, shipbuilding, etc. At that time, other universities and pathshalas were regularly approached Kandalur Shala for campus recruitments to get highly specialized people in several disciplines. Equal weightage was given by the academicians in the university for departments of physics and metaphysics. At present, in the stage of its revival, we academicians should work hard to imbibe all good practices, both in academic and administrative affairs that prevailed in Kandalur Shala. Our desire is to revive this great tradition of the Kandalur Shala in tune with the requirements of present modern society. We encourage interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary studies, and for that we will be always organizing a face-to-face dialogue, interdialogues between tradition and modernity. There is no distinction like old or new as far as knowledge is concerned, tradition or modern. In the case of seeking knowledge, it is a continuous process, but a kind of fusion is required, a healthy synthesis of ancient and modern wisdom for the welfare of the universe. So Kandalur Shala is committed for that. Now, coming to my subject, my paper, due to the positive time, I will be giving only salient features of some points, main points of my paper. The Vedangas, which are non-revealed texts, which worked as a transition in the history of Vedic literature. I'll be talking. The Vedangas are the first non-revealed texts attached to the Vedic literature. They are ancillary in character. The problem regarding the nature of their content arises not so much in the text on grammar, etymology, prosody, astronomy. They are strictly sciences, or siksha, or even sulba texts, but as in the srauta, grhya, and dharmasutras. The Vedangas, the Vedanga texts on grammar, etymology, prosody, and also in siksha, they regulate the correct pronunciation and understanding of the Vedic texts. The very fact that towards the beginning of the first millennium, millennium AD, these texts began to be written. That means it is revealed. It is not revealed, it is unrevealed. It has been written physically by scholars and began to be written. This indicates that for some reason or other, there was difficulty in understanding and pronouncing the Vedic text correctly. The Vasishtha Dharma Sutra mentions that there is a quotation that it's not a quotation, it is just a fact that what I want to quote here, that illiterate Brahmins, they cut short the period of learning of Vedic studies, which they throughout the year they used to study Vedas. That has been cut short to 4.5 months. Clearly, one reason for this decline of Vedic studies and of correct pronunciation of the scripture is the southward and eastward advancement of the Aryans to regions where various dialects of Dravidian and Ostric were spoken. Another was the presence of several foreign invaders, most of whom spoke alien languages. The Atri Dharma Sutra mentions several invaders named Shaka, Yavana, Bahlika, Kamboja, Kasha, Vanga, and Parasha. Such several names are there. Still more names are there. These most of these are names of foreign invaders who came to India between the close of the first millennium BC and the beginning of the second. Other sutra works register the presence of non-Indian Aryan speaking invaders who settled in India. In this context, we have a better understanding of prayers like, there are several prayers we see in those works that may I be able to form the vowels. This is one prayer. To produce, to hold fast, to utter the guttural, the dental, and the labial sounds. So at that time, people have become what we saw in dark about the pronunciation of this Vedic text, and they could not, and they have to prayer. They have to conduct prayer. They are pleading. Hence, we know we now have a dictum that the alien languages should not be learned. Only Vedic language and Sanskrit should be learned. The composition of the Sulba Sutras in verse, composition in meter, is another sign of their literary lateness. Late meters also, even among meters, the late meters are used in several sutras. All these show that they are what we call very recent works. And the late meters are used in several sutras, and technical terms from later philosophical treatises, as well as a new vocabulary, also attest to the presence of non-Indo-Aryan speakers and their rapid miscegenation, that is called Varna Sankara, leading to linguistic changes. Foreign invasions and the advance of the Aryans themselves in the hitherto unvisited that lands, which brought them into contact with the linguistic problems, was itself an incentive for the composition of grammar, etymology, siksa, and prosody. So these are written works. In his discussion of the Pradishakshyas, Dr. Suryakant says they point to a period when Vedic literature was being fast committed to writing, and the script being yet in a state of flux. Rules. It was not hard and fast rules were not there, which can appeal only to those students who love the grammatical studies, yet want to learn their samhitas with the help of patchwork and makeshift like Atharva. Because of the actual corruption and the fear of further corruption, the custodians of the Vedic lore codified rules for correct pronunciation, grammar, accent, and prosody in a despite bid to preserve what still remained comparatively intact. We noticed that there was then a growing dearth of Vedic scholars. That is also from the text, internal evidence, external evidence, internal evidences of the text, sutra text. Vedic scholars in the appendix of the Parishishta of the Paraskara Grhya Sutra, one reads, Vedic scholars are to be appointed. If there is a dearth of scholars, one should put at least one at the head of the row. And or in a crisis, a Brahmin should take Vedic lessons from a Kshatriya or even from a Vaishya and should follow him from behind. These are the quotations I am giving. So how the deterioration have happened? to what extent. That I want to explicitly make it clear by these quotations. The study and understanding of the Vedas were evidently on the wane during this period, and the formal texts like grammar, etc., attempt to salvage what still remains. But once these auxiliary texts were codified, they assumed a life of their own, which went far beyond their initial scope. They became secular subjects in which even laymen took an interest, presumably for the sake of other secular, that is, literary honors, which were cultivated then. Sulba Sutras and astronomy too soon snapped their umbilical ties with the Vedas, naval relation with the Vedas, and provoked full-fledged study of geometry for secular architecture and astronomy for the growing maritime trade. Even the Srauta Sutras did not remain unchanged through the ages. And due to paucity of time, I'm not giving explanations in other things that can be done later. So here, even the Srauta Sutras did not remain unchanged through the ages. Most of the Vedangas, they have showed the clear history of how they have departed from the core theme of Vedas, and they became secular, and they, as I mentioned earlier, that connected to maritime and also to the secular architecture, etc. There has been a gradual evolution in the sacrificial religion from the period of Brahmanas to that of the Prayogakaras. The authority of the older Shruti texts was gradually waning, and in the middle of the first millennium BC, they had ceased to influence the development of Hindu social thought and institutions from 500 BC. Not only is there a proliferation of srauta rites with time, a gradual fading out of older gods laying down rules for sacrifice, say about the Mahavrata, etc. Several Srauta Sutras laying down rules for sacrifice, say about the Mahavrata, as I mentioned. The antiquated and obsolete rite should not be performed. This has been mentioned. This dictum proves that the attitude to sacrifices was not static. Some older ones were losing what we call favor, while a host of new rites, when the older, which have some naval relation with the Vedic lore, when they fade and go behind the practices, then slowly some new groups of rites, they appear in the scene. They are non-sacrificial. They have no connection with sacrifices, yajnas, were coming into vogue. We now hear of new rites like Phalguni Karman, Dakshayana, Gonamika, Anugrahika. There are several names of the sacrifices. And even Vinayaka Kalpa, Shashti Kalpa, Shadahuta Homa, and even what we very popular nowadays, Narayana Bali. All these religious rites, as a group, they appeared in the scene. In the Sutra period, the Vedic sacrifice is clearly not only the religious ritual that practiced by the society. There are several practices, and the practices of sacrifices is one among the some 3 or 4 practices are there. That is one. Nor the only mode of worship. This sacrifice is not only the only mode of worship sanctioned by the authority. We have quite elaborate rites described in the Rigvedana and several grhya and dharmasutras, which mentioned puja as a valid mode of worship. There, the first time in the history, we see the word puja and the religious rites called puja as a valid mode of worship. Puja in these texts is basically what it is today. It presupposes temples, images, non-Vedic oblations, and even ingredients. The ingredients which they use in yajna and other things, all these things totally changed. Faith in Vishnu and Narayana is extolled also in Vaikhanasa Dharma Prashna. We now hear of the ritual use in the ritual use of sandalwood, a proof of the southward advancement of the Aryans. Now, the red sandalwood, bilwa flowers, flowers means leaves, and these things figure in the in many rites. The puja of Hari is now performed, that has appeared, and performed with the salagrama stone as a symbol. So there first we see the salagrama puja and other things. The Vedic sacrifice knew no temples. The Vedic sacrifice knew no temples. People then cleared a plot of ground. Sometimes they raised that ground and spread the kusha grasses on it and invoked the gods in that place. But in many Vedanga passages, we have clear, unambiguous references to temples and the like. The Ashalayana Srauta Sutra says that in the context of animal sacrifice, that the sacrificer sends the oblation with the instruction to take it to the place sacred to that god so that it reaches him. The same text again says that God's houses should be done the pradikshana. The supplementary the rite of pradakshina, doing pradakshina in the temple, the first occurs in this place, in this what we call Paraskara, Grhya Sutra. That is the supplementary sections of the Paraskara Grhya Sutra shows that rules for digging tanks, wells, ponds, and for constructing temples. Now, the Paraskara Sutra, which I have mentioned earlier, itself mentions that Indra's house rich in wealth. Some references this is in connection with the housewarming rites. The Kriya Kanda of the Gautama Sutra says that soil from a temple is not to be used for cleansing oneself. Gautama Dharma Sutra mentions the temple also. Now, this whole concept of a permanent residence of the god on earth, that is temple, is foreign to this idea is foreign to the Vedic sacrifices, in which no place was sacred to any god. A place was sanctioned, and in the course of most sacrifices, many gods were supposed to come there to be praised, offered oblations, and solicited for favor. So gods in the Vedic sacrifices were imagined as disembodied spirits who were, however, praised in the anthropomorphic manner. But now in the Vedanga literature, we hear of images Madhuradatta commenting on Hiranya Grhya Sutra, and also you see Haradatta who also comment on Avastamba Grhya Sutra, says that both places we see this statement, says that in the Shulagava sacrifice, Ishana, Midhushi and Jayanda were worshipped in icons. These are the gods. Clear mention of images is found in many passages. Thus, we hear of what one should do if the image should burn or break. So all these statements are discussions are there. Iconic worship of gods is described in great detail in the ritual section of the Gautama Sutra. The Vedanga Sutra describes Narayana Puja in a recognizably modern way. There is no much difference what we are doing now also. Here too, Narayana's icon is worshipped. The Rigvedana prescribes iconic worship of the folk deities with lotuses, sandal paste, mustard oil, and bilva flowers. Interestingly enough, many of the gods thus worshipped are late arrivals of foreign in origin. Suddenly, in the Sutra literature, one notices a whole host of new names of deities. The Bharadwaja Grhya Sutra mentions quite new gods at the Jyotishtoma that performance. There is the name, some very interesting names are there. Perhaps many of the people have not heard the names even. Swana, Bhaja, and Bambari, Hasta, Sauhasta. That is, several names are there. However, belong to these, however, belong to the earliest period of eclecticism. And now coming to the another part of this what we call srauta, grhya, and dharmasutras, we see evil spirits figure quite as importantly as gods. For child welfare, the rites have to ward off many such malevolent spirits. We have several lists of such names. If we classify and analyze the names, we notice that most are Indo-Aryan, although some are unintelligible, presumably because they Indo-Aryanized foreign names, while others are clearly foreign. Thus, Shanda and Marka, in Bhagavad and other things we say Shanda, Marka. Maybe the similarity of the name cannot be treated as that they are the same, but still there are some chances. The gods became mallas in the when the time succeeded, and the Shanda and Marka are from Iran. Actually, they are the gods of Iran. They figure in the Avesta, while the Kupani, one of the 6 Kritikas, now an evil spirit, is also foreign, possibly Middle Eastern, as is perhaps that Shishita. Another category may be very old Aryan or non-Aryan Catholic spirits, perhaps of a different origin. While now I will come to my conclusion of my paper, the problem that arrives is why are the texts which deal with non-Vedic modes of worship and penance called Vedangas, limbs of the Vedas? This is the question. These are non-Vedic, perhaps, non-Aryan and non-Vedic. I submit that this is so because like the Brahmanas, these texts sought to become a compendium of normative rules for the religious life of the entire country. But while the Brahmanas had been merely syncretistic and had Aryanized the non-Aryan myths and rituals by finding place for them in the expanding the elaborate corpus of Aryan myths and rituals, thus preserving a recognizable homogeneity. The sutras failed to do so. Society in the sutra period was no longer homogeneous. Religious life flowed in three independent streams, each as authentic as the other. Sacrifice was no longer the only valid mode of religious practice. Hence, desperate, mutually exclusive sections are juxtaposed in the Sutra, Grhya, and Dharmasutras period. Since these contain recognized foreign elements of benefits and practices alien to the Vedic religion, the Vedangas are not regarded as revealed, not as apaurushaya. They are paurushaya, so to say. This is striking because the priests withdraw the aura which attaches to the Vedas, its revealed nature from this literature, although it apparently strives to preserve the holy lore intact. The reason is the same as not allowing the Shudra the right to study the Vedas, that is, the presence of the non-Vedic, non-Aryan element in it. But more significant is the fact that they are called Vedanga, limbs or parts of the Vedas. The reason is perhaps not far to seek, because they are neither a recognized ecclesia, that is Dharmasangha, nor a codified scripture for these proto-Puranic puja sections, because the Puranas themselves had not yet been composed, and because emergent Hinduism had not yet wrested recognition and respectability from society for those sections. Those sections had to be incorporated in the existing corpus of religious literature, even at the cost of contradiction and incongruity in their content. With these some observations, I beg to remain. Thank you. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Professor MURALEEMADHAVan. In your presidential address, you have covered a vast subject area, starting with how this Kandalu Shala had this concept of the residential school, the Andevasitwa, and how it had the 32 departments, and how the Vedangas did not merely stop with explaining the Vedic passages and their significance, but extended or rather encompassed other fields of knowledge also. And I'm sure everybody is very much benefited by your presidential paper.